Elena Martinez adjusted the worn wicker basket hanging from her arm as she stepped deeper into the woods. The October morning was gray and cold, the kind of day that pressed down on her shoulders like a physical weight. At 32, she'd learned to find comfort in these solitary hours among the trees, far from the suffocating walls of the house she shared with Marcus. Her boots crunched over fallen leaves, their edges crisp with early frost. She paused beside a rotting log, kneeling to examine a cluster of oyster mushrooms growing from the decaying wood. Her grandmother Sofia had taught her this: how to identify the safe ones, how to harvest without damaging the mycelium beneath. These skills, dismissed by Marcus as useless hobbies, kept them fed when his gambling left their cupboards bare. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena's fingers worked carefully, a small knife separating the mushrooms from their anchor. She placed them gently in her basket, already calculating how she'd prepare them. Maybe with the last of the rice, stretched thin with broth made from vegetable scraps she'd been saving. A sound cut through the forest quiet. Elena froze, her head tilting as she strained to hear. There it was again, muffled, desperate, distinctly human. Her heart hammered as she stood, abandoning the mushroom patch to follow the sound. Branches caught at her faded flannel shirt as she pushed through underbrush, the cries growing louder, more frantic. She emerged into a small clearing and stopped dead. The earth before her was freshly disturbed, dark soil mounded in a rough rectangle. But it was moving, heaving slightly, and the muffled screams were coming from beneath it. "Oh God," Elena whispered, dropping to her knees. Her hands plunged into the loose dirt, scooping frantically as panic and instinct took over. Soil embedded under her fingernails, coating her palms as she dug with a desperation she didn't know she possessed. A hand broke through, then another. Elena grabbed them, pulling as she continued clearing earth away. A face emerged, mud-streaked, bloodied, eyes wild with terror and oxygen deprivation. The man gasped and thrashed, clearly in shock, his body fighting against the weight of soil still pinning him down. "Easy, easy," Elena said, though her own hands were shaking. She remembered Sofia's words about frightened animals, about the power of a calm voice. Without thinking, she began to whisper the prayer her grandmother had taught her years ago, the words in Spanish flowing automatically. "Paz, mi hijo, paz. Dios te protege. Estás a salvo ahora. Peace, my son, peace. God protects you. You are safe now." The effect was immediate and inexplicable. The man's frantic movements slowed. His wild eyes found hers, and something in their depths shifted from pure animal terror to confused recognition of another human presence. Elena continued the prayer, her voice steady even as her heart raced, repeating the familiar phrases as she worked to free him. She cleared the earth from his chest, his torso, his legs. He was tall, she realized, and well-built beneath clothes that had once been expensive but were now torn and filthy. Blood matted his dark hair, and bruises were already blooming across his face and arms. Someone had beaten him severely before burying him here. "Can you move?" Elena asked, switching to English as she helped him sit up. The man nodded weakly, his breathing ragged. He tried to stand, but his legs buckled. Elena caught him, her small frame surprisingly strong as she supported his weight. "I've got you," she said. "There's a cabin not far from here. Can you walk if I help?" The man nodded again, still too shocked or traumatized to speak. Elena looped his arm over her shoulders and began the slow journey through the woods. With each step, her mind raced. What had happened to him? Who had done this? Should she call the police immediately or get him somewhere safe first? But beneath the practical questions was something else, a bone-deep certainty that finding this man wasn't an accident, that the same instinct that had taught her to forage, to survive, to endure, was now telling her that both their lives had just changed forever. The man stumbled beside her, and Elena whispered the prayer again, feeling its rhythm steady them both as they disappeared deeper into the forest. The cabin materialized through the trees like something from a half-forgotten dream. Elena felt the familiar ache in her chest as she guided the injured man toward it. This place that had been Sofia's, that Marcus didn't even know existed, her one sacred secret in a life stripped of privacy. It was small and weathered, the wood silvered by years of rain and sun. The porch sagged slightly, and moss grew thick on the north-facing roof. But to Elena, it was beautiful. It was hers. She shouldered the door open, steadying the man as they stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the weak light, filtering through grimy windows. Sofia's belongings remained exactly as they'd been 3 years ago when she'd died. The worn couch with its crocheted afghan, the small wood stove, the shelf of books in Spanish and English, the Virgin Mary statue on the mantel. "Here," Elena said softly, helping the man to the couch. He collapsed onto it with a groan, his eyes closing. Now, in better light, she could assess the damage properly. The gash on his head would need cleaning and possibly stitches. The bruising on his ribs suggested they might be broken. His hands were scraped raw, probably from trying to claw his way out of his grave. Elena moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, lighting the old kerosene lamp since there was no electricity, pumping water from the sink that drew from a well Sofia had dug herself. She found the first aid kit her grandmother had kept stocked, its supplies supplemented by items Elena had been adding over the years: bandages, antiseptic, pain relievers she'd bought with spare change. The man had passed out or was sleeping. Elena worked carefully, cleaning the wound on his head first. Up close, she could see he was Asian, probably in his late 30s, with strong features beneath the dirt and blood. His clothes, though ruined now, had been quality: designer jeans, an expensive watch still on his wrist despite everything. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As she cleaned and bandaged, Elena found herself whispering the prayer again, more for her own comfort now than his. Paz mi hijo paz. What was she doing? She'd brought a stranger to her secret place, a man who'd clearly been the victim of violence. For all she knew, he could be dangerous himself. But her instincts, the same ones that had kept her alive through 10 years with Marcus, said otherwise. She'd just finished wrapping his ribs when his eyes opened. They were dark brown, sharp and intelligent despite the trauma. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Where am I?" His voice was hoarse, rough from screaming and soil. "My grandmother's cabin, about 3 miles into the woods outside Millbrook." Elena sat back, giving him space. "I found you buried. Do you remember what happened?" The man's jaw tightened. "How long have I been here?" "About an hour since I found you. Maybe 3 or 4 hours since." She trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Since someone tried to kill me," he finished flatly. He tried to sit up and winced, hand going to his ribs. "You bandaged me. Basic first aid. My grandmother taught me. You should go to a hospital, though. Those ribs might be broken, and you could have a concussion." "No." The word was sharp, almost panicked. "No hospitals. No police. Not yet." Elena studied him, recognition of that fear resonating in her bones. How many times had she refused to go to the emergency room when Marcus's anger left marks? How many times had she lied about bruises to avoid questions? "Okay," she said quietly. "No hospitals. But you need to tell me your name at least." He hesitated, clearly calculating what to reveal. "David. David Chun. I'm Elena Martinez." She stood, moving to the small sink. "I'm going to make some tea if the leaves are still good. Then you should rest. Why did you help me?" The question stopped her mid-step. "You don't know me. I could be dangerous." Elena turned to face him. "Maybe. But you were buried alive and terrified. I couldn't leave you there." David's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through the wariness. "That prayer you said. What was it?" "Something my grandmother taught me. It's in Spanish. Means peace, my son, peace. God protects you. You are safe now." Elena's voice caught on the last word, remembering Sofia's hands on her own shoulders, those same words spoken when she'd wake from nightmares after her parents died. "It helped," David said softly. I thought I was going to die in that grave. Then I heard your voice, and it was like being pulled back from somewhere very dark." They looked at each other across the dusty cabin, two strangers bound by something neither quite understood. Elena saw the moment David registered her faded clothes, the calluses on her hands, the way she held herself, coiled tight, ready to flee or fight. "You should sleep," Elena said, breaking the moment. "I need to get back home before," she caught herself. "Before it gets too late. Before someone misses you," David corrected gently. "A husband." Elena didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. "Elena." David said as she gathered her basket. Thank you. For my life. She nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. As she slipped out of the cabin and back into the woods, Elena tried to convince herself that this was just a strange detour in her day, that she'd helped someone, and that would be the end of it. But she knew better. She'd felt the weight of David's gaze, seen the questions in his eyes that mirrored ones she rarely let herself ask. And more than that, she'd felt something shift inside herself as she dug him out of that grave. A remembering of who she'd been before Marcus had slowly buried her in a different kind of earth. The woods closed around her as she walked home, and for the first time in years, Elena felt less like she was returning to safety and more like she was walking back into her own grave. The house was dark when Elena slipped through the back door, her muddy boots left on the porch. She could hear the television blaring from the living room. Some sports commentary Marcus liked to pretend he understood while nursing a bottle. It was barely 5 in the afternoon, but judging by the slur in his voice when he called out, he was already 3 drinks deep. That you, Elena? Yes. She kept her voice steady, normal, as she moved through the kitchen. Her hands still trembled slightly from adrenaline. Dirt ground deep under her nails despite her attempts to clean them at the cabin's pump. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his frame filling it. He'd been handsome once, the high school football star with the easy smile and big dreams. At 35, those dreams had curdled into resentment, the muscle gone soft, the smile rare and usually mean. His hair was uncombed, his t-shirt stained. Where the hell have you been? Dinner should have been ready an hour ago. Elena moved to the refrigerator, grateful her back was to him. I was foraging. Found a good patch of mushrooms, but it was farther than I expected. I got turned around for a bit. Mushrooms, Marcus snorted. While I'm here working my ass off. Elena bit back the retort that he'd been laid off from the construction site 3 weeks ago and hadn't looked for new work since. That path only led to more anger. I'll start dinner now. 20 minutes. He grunted, apparently satisfied, and retreated to his sports and bottle. Elena's hands moved automatically, pulling out the meager ingredients for a meal. Rice. The mushrooms she'd actually managed to collect before finding David. A can of beans. She'd stretch it somehow. As the rice cooker hummed, Elena stared at her reflection in the dark window above the sink. Mud streaked her temple. She'd missed a spot. Evidence. She scrubbed it away quickly, her mind spinning. What had she done? Hidden an injured man in her grandmother's cabin. Lied to Marcus about where she'd been. Committed to what exactly? Going back tomorrow? She had to. David was in no condition to care for himself, and he'd been adamant about no hospitals. That night, lying in bed next to Marcus's snoring bulk, Elena stared at the water-stained ceiling and wondered if she'd finally lost her mind. For 10 years, she'd made herself small, quiet, invisible. She'd learned which floorboards creaked, which words would set Marcus off, how to read his moods like weather patterns. Survival meant submission, meant silence. And now she'd saved a stranger's life and hidden him in the one place that was supposed to be just hers. The next morning, Elena woke before dawn. She dressed in the dark, pulling on her foraging clothes, and left a note claiming another early morning library shift. The lie came easier than it should have, written in her careful handwriting on the pad by the phone. The library. It was her one anchor to a life beyond these walls. 3 days a week, she worked at the Millbrook Public Library, shelving books and helping patrons and breathing in the smell of paper and possibility. The pay was negligible, but Marcus let her keep it as long as she handed over rent from each check. But today wasn't a library day. Today she drove the battered Ford they shared. Marcus rarely needed it anymore. Out to the trailhead near Sofia's cabin, parking where the trees would hide it from the road. The cabin looked different in the morning light, less haunted, more solid. Elena knocked softly before entering, unsure what she'd find. David was awake, sitting up on the couch, looking both better and worse. The sleep had helped, but in full daylight the extent of his injuries was more apparent. His left eye was swollen nearly shut, deep purple. Bruises covered his arms, his ribs. Someone had hurt him systematically, violently. How do you feel? Elena set down the bag she'd brought. Food smuggled from her own pantry, fresh bandages, pain medication. Like I was buried alive, David said, attempting a smile that turned into a wince. But alive, thanks to you. Elena busied herself unpacking supplies. I brought breakfast. It's not much. It's everything. The sincerity in his voice made her pause. David gestured to the watch on his wrist, now clean of mud. This is worth about $15,000. I'd give you 10 of them right now for that breakfast and another day of safety. Elena's hands stilled. $15,000. More than she'd earned in the past 2 years. I don't want your money. I know. That's why I'm telling you. David accepted the protein bar and water bottle she handed him. You could have robbed me. Could have called the police and collected whatever reward. Instead, you're here with stolen groceries and medical supplies. How do you know they're stolen? The way you unpack them. Like you were committing a crime. David's gaze was too knowing. You're married to someone who controls the money. Elena didn't confirm or deny, focusing on checking his bandages. The head wound looked better, no signs of infection. You should tell me what happened. Who buried you? David was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. My business partner, Victor Ramsey. We founded a cybersecurity company together 12 years ago. Built it into something worth hundreds of millions. Last week, I discovered he'd been embezzling, hiding money in offshore accounts. When I confronted him, David's jaw tightened. He hired someone to kill me, beat me unconscious, drove me out here, and buried me. Elena sat back on her heels, processing. He thinks you're dead. Everyone does by now. Your family? Friends? Something painful flickered across David's face. No family. My parents died years ago. My sister and I don't speak. Friends. He laughed bitterly. Turns out when you're rich, it's hard to know which ones are real. My ex-wife certainly wasn't. She admitted on our divorce papers that she'd married me for the money. The loneliness in his voice resonated with Elena's own isolation. Different circumstances, different cages, but the same essential abandonment. I'm sorry, she said softly. Don't be. I'm alive because of you. David studied her. Now I need to figure out how to stay that way and bring Victor down. But I can't do that if he knows I survived. I need time, evidence, proof he can't explain away. That's why no police. That's why no police. Victor is smart, connected. He'd spin this as me embezzling, faking my death. I need leverage first. Elena understood leverage, understood the need for proof before making accusations. How many times had she wished for evidence of Marcus's cruelty? But bruises faded, and cruel words left no marks a camera could capture. How long, she asked. I don't know. A week? Maybe 2. David met her eyes. I'm asking too much. You have your own life, your own problems. I shouldn't. I'll help, Elena interrupted. She wasn't sure why, except that digging David out of that grave had awakened something in her she'd thought Marcus had killed. I work at the library 3 days a week. I can come the other days, bring supplies. But you have to stay hidden. No one can know about this cabin. Not even your husband. Especially not him. They looked at each other in the quiet cabin, the morning sun slanting through dusty windows, 2 people on the run from different kinds of violence, making a pact neither fully understood. That prayer, David said suddenly. Would you teach it to me? The whole thing. Elena nodded, surprised by the request. Pause, mi hijo, pause, she began, and David repeated the words carefully, his accent rough but earnest. As they practiced, Elena felt Sofia's presence in the room. Her grandmother who'd taught her to survive, to find food in the forest, to whisper prayers in the dark. Elena stayed another hour, showing David where Sofia kept supplies, how to work the pump and the wood stove. When she finally left, promising to return the next day, David caught her hand. Why are you doing this? He asked. Really? Elena thought of the grave, of the terror in David's eyes, of her own slow burial under Marcus's control. Because someone had to, she said simply. Because you needed help, and I could give it. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough for now. The drive home took 15 minutes. Elena spent them crafting her story, the mushroom patches she'd supposedly found, the book inventory she'd supposedly done at the library. By the time she pulled into the driveway, the lies sat smooth on her tongue. Marcus was awake, hungover, and suspicious. You're taking a lot of these foraging trips lately. The season's good right now. Won't last much longer. He studied her, and Elena forced herself to meet his gaze without flinching, without the usual signs of submission that would satisfy him. For the first time in years, she was protecting something that mattered, and it made her steady where she should have been afraid. Whatever, Marcus finally grunted. Just make sure dinner's not late again. Elena nodded and moved past him into their small house. That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the day, teaching David the prayer, the look in his eyes when he'd realized she wasn't going to betray him, the way he'd smiled when she'd promised to return. Outside, an owl called through the darkness. Elena closed her eyes and whispered her grandmother's prayer, feeling for the first time that it might be true. Maybe she could protect someone. Maybe she was safe, at least in this secret corner of her life. She fell asleep planning tomorrow's lies and thinking about a man she barely knew, buried and reborn in the same afternoon. The Millbrook Public Library occupied a converted Victorian house on Main Street, its rooms still arranged like a home. Fiction in what had been the parlor, nonfiction in the dining room, children's books in the former kitchen. Elena had always loved the illusion that you weren't in a library at all, but rather visiting someone's house where you were welcome to read anything you liked. She was reshelving returns in the biography section when Rachel Park walked in. Elena's hands froze on the spine of a book. She hadn't seen Rachel in 2 years, not since Marcus had slowly, systematically cut her off from everyone who'd known her before their marriage. Rachel had tried at first, invitations to coffee that Elena declined with increasingly desperate excuses, phone calls that went unanswered, until finally, mercifully, Rachel had stopped trying. Now here she was, her black hair shorter than Elena remembered, wearing professional clothes that spoke of success and purpose. She spotted Elena immediately, and something complicated crossed her face. Relief, hurt, determination. "Elena," Rachel said, approaching with careful steps, as if Elena might bolt. "I heard you still worked here." "Rachel." "Hi." Elena's voice came out tight. She set the book down with trembling hands. Rachel's return to Pinewood Hollow should have been a comfort, but to Elena it felt like exposure. When her former best friend appeared at the library with a tentative smile, asking if she wanted to catch up, every instinct told Elena to refuse. Yet something in her had shifted this past week. She had saved a man's life, hidden him, lied for him. Breaking one more rule no longer felt impossible. They met at the diner across the street, a place that smelled of grease and familiarity. Rachel looked polished, confident, while Elena felt small and faded beside her. When Rachel asked gently, "How are things, really?" Elena lied. "Fine." Rachel's eyes fell on the faint bruises at Elena's wrist. She spoke softly, like someone used to navigating pain. "I work with domestic violence survivors now. I have resources, safe houses, advocates. If you or anyone ever needed them." Elena could barely breathe. "For patrons," she said, forcing a smile. Rachel handed her a business card anyway, her eyes full of quiet urgency. Elena took it, though she knew she'd never call. Still, later that day, she locked herself in the library bathroom and pressed the card to her chest like a secret. That evening, she didn't go home. Instead, she drove to the cabin, bringing research for David, news articles, company records, evidence of Victor's fraud. David had cleaned up, his bruises fading but his anger sharpening. "Victor's already filed paperwork to declare me dead," he said. "He's consolidating control." Elena sat beside him, scanning the files. "You need proof, something public." "The courthouse might have records," David said. "I can get them," Elena replied. "Library access, research credentials, it's my job." David studied her, something like admiration in his eyes. "You're not just a librarian." She shrugged. "I wanted to be an archivist once." Marcus thought it was a waste. They worked late, piecing together leads, until Marcus's texts began lighting up her phone. "Where are you? Who are you with?" Elena lied smoothly now, her fingers steady even as her heart pounded. "You should go," David said quietly. "Before he finds out." Elena hesitated. "I'll come back tomorrow. With the documents." When she left, dusk had swallowed the woods. David watched her go, realizing that whatever danger surrounded him, Elena's might be worse, and she was choosing to face it anyway. Driving home, her phone still buzzing with Marcus's rage, Elena felt something unexpected beneath the fear, resolve. She had once believed survival meant silence. Now she knew better. Saving David wasn't just about him. It was her first act of defiance, her first step towards saving herself. Driving home through the darkening woods, Marcus's furious texts lighting her phone, Elena knew David was right. She was finally choosing something. Choosing to act, to protect, to matter. It terrified her, but it also made her feel alive. Marcus was drunk when she got home. His accusations came fast, his rage volcanic. Elena stayed silent, her practiced survival mode. Don't argue. Don't react. Wait for the storm to pass. But this time, her mind whispered Sofia's old prayer. Pause, mi hijo, pause. Peace. Somewhere out there was a man who'd thanked her, who saw her as capable, who trusted her. Are you even listening to me? Marcus roared. Yes, she said. But she was also listening to another voice, the one telling her this wasn't all there was. That night, she took Rachel's business card from her hiding place and held it like a promise. The next morning, she went to the courthouse before work, requesting corporate records for Victor's company. Each document she gathered felt like oxygen, each form a shovel in the dirt that had buried her for 10 years. For the first time in her marriage, Elena wasn't just surviving. She was digging her way out. Patricia's voice was sharp. Difficulties? That's a polite word for what Marcus does to that poor girl. I've heard him shouting, her crying. I called Tom twice, but Elena never presses charges. She's trapped. Maya leaned forward. How long? Worse after Sofia died, Patricia said. Sofia kept Marcus in check. Since then, Elena's been isolated. She works, goes home, or forages in the woods, plants, mushrooms, herbs. Sofia taught her. There's a cabin out there, belonged to Sofia. It's Elena's safe place. Maya's instincts sharpened. Where? Patricia gave vague directions, saying Elena had been bringing supplies lately, food, blankets, first aid. Maybe she's planning to leave him, she said hopefully. Or hide. When Maya left, she marked the area on her tablet. A woman in an abusive marriage, a secret cabin, strange supply trips. The same week, a millionaire vanished nearby. Coincidence? Or connection? Then her phone buzzed. David Chin's encrypted files had been unlocked. They proved his partner, Victor Ramsey, had embezzled millions and lured him to a property trip that was really a trap. David must have escaped and needed local help to hide. Someone like Elena Martinez. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in Murphy's bar, drunk and suspicious. Elena had been secretive, spending nights at the cabin. News of the missing millionaire made his mind spiral. He drove there the next morning and found David Chin alive inside. Smelling opportunity, Marcus demanded $500,000 to keep quiet. When Elena arrived, David told her everything. She refused to involve police. Marcus would lash out. They argued, fear tangled with growing affection. You can't save me, Elena whispered. I have to save myself. But Marcus's deadline loomed, and Maya was already tracing fresh tire tracks leading towards Sofia's hidden cabin. Detective Maya Rodriguez arrived with troopers, piecing together the chaos. Victor's attempted murder, David's survival, Marcus's extortion. David showed encrypted files proving Victor's crimes, explaining why he'd hidden instead of going to authorities. Maya then turned to Elena. You found a buried man and didn't report it. What? Elena answered steadily. He'd have died if I left him. I was wrong legally, but right morally. I saved a life. Maya accepted her explanation, arrested Marcus for extortion, and chaos erupted when his loan sharks appeared, one grabbing Elena as a hostage. Calm under pressure, she told them Marcus had no money. David offered to pay $50,000 if they released her unharmed. They surrendered, and police cuffed them. Later, Maya reassured Elena she wasn't being charged. Only Marcus faced prosecution. Rachel offered her a safe place to stay, and Tom promised support services. That night, as quiet returned, David confessed, when he aimed that gun at you, I'd have given everything just to keep you safe. Elena realized she loved him, chaotically, impossibly, but both knew they needed time to heal before beginning anew. Amid wreckage and flashing lights, they clung to hope, survivors of violence now standing on the edge of something real. Maya's team worked through the night, hunting Victor Ramsey after his threatening message. By morning, a traffic camera near the Canadian border showed his rental car, seemingly fleeing north. Maya rushed to coordinate the search, leaving David to guard Elena. But Victor hadn't fled. He'd sent a decoy car and doubled back to Pinewood Hollow, determined to destroy the woman whose rescue had exposed him. That afternoon, Elena's cabin went up in flames, his first warning. The second came when Mrs. Hawthorne reported a stranger offering money for Elena's location. By nightfall, he found her. When the power failed at Rachel's apartment, David and a security agent braced for attack. Victor broke through the door, shooting Torres before grappling with David. Hearing the gunfire, Elena emerged from hiding. She seized Victor's fallen gun and faced him, trembling but resolute. "Stop," she said. "You can surrender, or I prove I'm stronger than you think." Sirens wailed outside. Cornered, Victor surrendered. When police stormed in, Elena collapsed into sobs of relief and exhaustion. Victor Ramsey was arrested. His reign of manipulation ended. Later, watching him led away in handcuffs, Elena felt no vengeance, only peace. For the first time in years, she was truly free. Elena and David met beneath the oak sapling she'd planted, a symbol of growth and patience. Their love had begun in crisis, and now they spoke honestly about needing time to heal separately before trying again. "I love you," Elena said, "but I need to be whole first." David agreed. Healthy love requires two complete people choosing each other. They promised to continue their work together, to wait, to grow. Months later, Elena's healing deepened. Her thesis on libraries aiding survivors gained recognition, and she built programs that saved lives. When David returned for the foundation gala, the oak had grown tall, thriving as they had. "I think I'm ready," Elena said softly. They kissed, not from desperation, but choice. That night, Pinewood Hollow glowed with promise. David planned to stay, drawn by purpose and peace. Elena, now grounded and free, saw clearly. Their story was not about rescue but renewal. Over tea with Rachel later, she smiled. "We're trying again, this time as whole people." Rachel raised her mug. "To second chances." And outside, the oak stood strong, a living testament that healing, like love, takes time, but with patience and care, both can endure for a lifetime. 6 months later, Elena and David returned to the thriving oak tree they'd planted for Sofia Reyes. They mounted a bronze plaque reading, "May it grow slowly, stand firmly, and shelter those who need protection." The tree's deep roots mirrored their own healing, steady, deliberate, and earned. Their relationship, imperfect but honest, had become a foundation built on mutual respect and trust. As autumn sunlight filtered through the branches, Elena whispered gratitude to her grandmother's memory for strength, love, and guidance. That night, beneath the stars, she prayed her own words of survival and grace, proof that from pain, life could grow again. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.